Hey, what up, YouTube? It's the Dirt Road, and that's Mike over there.
This is Mr. Rick.
What's happening, pal?
Good to see you again, brother.
And we all know our first, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but our very, very first podcast was taped on the night that the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And we just did an impromptu video on it, right?
And we talked about it that night, yeah.
I mean, we knew nothing about it, obviously, other than what we witnessed on TV like everybody else. But we just put out a video. We thought it was the right thing to do. And at that point, we knew nothing. And at this point, we still don't know all that much more. And we had one of our viewers, Mike, can you tell which viewer was it do you remember who was it that requested that we talk about this again?
I don't remember the account name, but I will get it and we'll shout it out.
Yeah, we'll definitely get it. We'll shout it out in the comments. But one of our viewers requested that we revisit this now, a month and a half later. And Mike had some things he wanted to say about it, and I'll react to it. I really don't, I think the biggest problem, Mike, is that we just... And I understand there's an active investigation going on, and you're a detective, and you can't
divulge certain things. Yeah, you want to hold back information.
Absolutely, but we should know more than we know.
Oh, without a doubt. Listen, any investigation, right? When it comes to something like this, a violent act of any kind, when you're investigating, there are those holdback details that you keep back because you don't obviously want those things out because you got to validate information you have already or what you believe. So you're going to hold certain things back. You're going to hold back certain details, things like that. But a majority of the investigation can be released publicly and it wouldn't necessarily affect the investigation, for the most part. There are those circumstances where it can't be, but for the most part, that's true. With this assassination attempt, you know almost nothing, right? We know almost nothing. And at this point now, what we're seeing is the establishment, the DC establishment, trying to steer us back towards, it was Iran. There's a very same group of people that have been trying to pick a war with Iran for God knows how long. These are the same people who want forever war everywhere else in the world. Trying to tell us that Iran somehow got this 20-year-old kid in Butler, Pennsylvania to go try and shoot President Trump at a rally. Possible? Yeah. Likely? I don't think so. There's a few elements that have come out that we do know that are verified right now. The most telling being a cell phone that was pinged, being with Crooks at one point at least one point prior
Crooks,
to
the name of the kid
the attempted assassin, the one who killed Crooks,
criminals,
Crooks, the actual attempted assassin. So this cell phone pings next to his cell phone. Obviously, they're in the same place, same time, that kind of thing, where they're meeting somewhere in Butler, Pennsylvania, at least once before. But it seems like there's a lot more communication between them than that. And then the same cell phone is pinging in D.C., right in the vicinity of like FBI headquarters. So now that begs the question: was the FBI talking to him? Did they have foreknowledge about his intent? Did they put him up to it? Were they trying to instigate it? Like, what was that involvement? Where did that whole
And we're
thing
not
go?
saying they did.
I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I would like to have that question answered. Like, obviously there's something there. Those cell phone pings are relevant. They matter. And it's something that should be spoken about. But in this investigation, what do you see? No press conferences from the FBI. No press conferences from the Secret Service. We had the Secret Service director step down. But the guy who took her place was the guy who was directly responsible for denying Trump's security and creating the mess that led to that attempt.
One of the top guys on the Warren Commission was the ex-CIA director that Kennedy had fired.
Exactly, exactly.
You get these weird coincidences, huh?
So you look at that as a detective, right? Here's the thing about coincidence. As a detective, one of the first things they'll tell you as a detective, right? And I learned from... These guys were the best in the business. They really were. They were like magic. I mean, they were just amazing, amazing people.
NYPD detectives are the best.
These guys, the guys I learned from, they were masters, man. They really were. And one of the first things they told me, besides making fun of me, calling me names, and abusing me because I was a rookie in the squad, was that there's no such thing as coincidence. And they were right. Through hundreds and hundreds of investigations, I've learned that there is no such thing as coincidence. There are things that happen to be there, but there's always a piece of the story to be told by that, whatever it's there. So when I look at this case as a detective, if I look at the assassination attempt, right, what I see is a lot of smoke, right? And where there's smoke, there's fire. So I see a lot of smoke, and a lot of that smoke has to do with our establishment, with, similarities to, say, like the Kennedy assassination or something like that, where we're learning now, how many years later, that there really was a direct involvement of our own government in this thing. How deep that was or what that looked like, we don't know. But we could say pretty definitively now that there was definitely some involvement.
Yeah, now, assassination attempts aren't always political. I mean,
some are ideological, some are just crazies.
One of the Manson girls, took a shot at Ford. That had nothing to do
you
with
had,
politics.
Reagan's assassination attempt trying to impress Jodie Foster.
A wacko just doing this. So it's not always about politics. But I think with me, just as someone who's always curious, and it just goes back to my college days majoring in history. We always had to look for answers, right? We had to research things and research. So I'm a curious person.
Yeah.
And my antenna goes up when somebody tells me I'm not allowed to know.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I'm not allowed to know, it makes me want to know more. I mean, I just think it's human nature. Forget whether you're a historian or not. Just like human nature, right? A mom tells a kid, don't touch this. As soon as mom turns her back, the kid touches it, right?
Right, yeah.
It's just on human nature. So when we're told that we can't know something, it should bring everybody's antennas up.
Oh, absolutely. There has been zero transparency in the investigation so far.
None, and Mike,
not even like mainstream media.
No.
Yeah, mainstream media is not covering this at all.
No.
So it's like everybody got the message right away, like, oh, we're not talking about this. And, Rick said something off camera earlier that makes a lot of sense, and I agree with, and I've heard it said before, but I agree with it. And that, it does make Trump look strong, because immediately after getting shot, the guy standing up, putting his fist up, going, fight, fight, fight. And he got a bump in the polls for that, because, again, here's this man that probably one of the most extreme circumstances of his life. Mm-hmm. And the one thing he thinks to do is to bolster everybody around him and let them know he's okay and that he wants them to be okay and to fight, fight, fight.
And, of course, don't misunderstand. We don't want somebody to get somebody died there. And
two of the men were seriously
terribly
injured,
wounded, and Trump almost died.
And a man died.
That's not the way you want to bump in the polls.
No,
but
never.
The bottom line is that it does make Trump look strong. Again, I don't know. Did a message go out to the media? Don't cover this anymore. Is Americans' attention spans just bad? Again, I'm a firm believer in capitalism and supply and demand, and just if the consumer wants something, the consumer will get it. So it's easy to blame the media. It's easy to blame cover-ups. But if enough people were demanding to know, this is, regardless of whether people love or hate Trump, this is a man who was president, who very well can be president again in a few months, and he was almost killed, and he's protected by one of the most esteemed organizations in the world, the American Secret Service.
Dropped the ball.
And something went awry, and again, it's back to the Kennedy thing. It's almost like we're not allowed to know, and that makes my curiosity go up. So do I know that this is a media thing to try to make Trump, try to keep Trump from looking strong? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows?
Possibly.
But there's got to be a reason. I don't know what that reason is. There's got to be a reason that we have not gotten this information. And again, the historian in me always wants to know, And I was just telling you before we went on camera that for the first 20, 25 years of my life, I was of the belief, single shooter for Kennedy. It was, Lee Harvey Oswald killed him, and then crazy guy Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald, and the Warren Commission said it. When I was in college, the Kennedy assassination was only 18, 20 years prior.
Yeah.
So this is just what we all thought. We all thought Oliver Stone was a little wacky when he came out with the movie.
JFK.
But now here we are, 50 years? Is it 50 years? 60 years.
60 years.
60 years after the assassination.
Yeah.
And we still don't know all the answers. We still are not given these documents. And now seem to be going down this same road with Trump. Maybe it was just some crazy guy who somehow got onto a roof and shot Trump. Could be. But, come on.
I don't think so.
There's got to be a little bit more to it.
So, here's my thing, right? And if you've seen the pictures online, they're circulating. If you haven't seen them yet, you can go look them up. The bombs that he had in his van at the site, right? He had these devices. These were not, some crazy 20-year-old kid in his garage building these little bombs. These were pretty sophisticated devices. And sophisticated, in the sense of, to build the kind of devices he built, you would have to have some kind of training or knowledge of building devices. You'd have to really know what you were doing to build those kinds of devices. They're not sophisticated to the point where a bomb squad would have a hard time disarming them or dealing with them. That's not the case at all. But that being said, the average everyday person is not going to be able to build a device like that.
But these aren't the questions that anybody's asking, right?
Nobody's
asking.
Well,
what's the first question? Think about it. This just popped into my head. What's the first thing, at least one of the first things, that the media answered right after the attempt? One of the first things they answered. He's a registered Republican.
Right, but in reality he wasn't.
But who cares one way or the other? What difference does that even make?
Because they don't want their side to be associated with these ideologues.
Yes.
That's why all the trends, we have all these mass shooters, right? The most recent one in Georgia a few days ago. and the guy's trans. And that's being completely blacked out in the media. This kid brought an AR-15 in school, killed 4 people, wounded 9 more, and he's trans. And you can see it clearly in the photos of him that he's living as a girl. This is another trans shooter. And nobody wants to talk about the fact that these mass shooters over the last few years especially have all been I shouldn't say all, have predominantly had some kind of trans history or whatever.
Well, there's only 2 that I know of. The
Nashville shooter, this kid.
One.
There were a bunch of other ones too.
But either way, to me, that's not the most important bit of information. Like that, the first thing the media shouldn't be finding out is what political party does somebody belong to, what group does somebody. If they belong to like a terrorist organization, obviously
sure,
that's
absolutely.
important.
Is the guy a neo-Nazi? Is he perhaps maybe an anarchist?
Are they a member of the
Is he
Ku Klux
Antifa?
Klan? Are they something like that? Then yes. But whether the person's a registered Republican or not, what the fuck difference does that make? They're always talking about stuff like that. But we're not getting any information. And I know that we're not 60 years out like we were from the Kennedy assassination, but I just am of the belief
even
that
in the
Americans
Kennedy
have the right
assassination,
to know.
you had much more information about the shooter, about the circumstances, everything else, right away.
Sure, absolutely.
And we didn't have mass media back then, right? We had the nightly news and the newspaper. That was what you had.
But they were good media.
Well, they did their job.
Yeah,
they asked the right questions.
Right.
They were willing to dig. They were willing to get their sources.
Right.
Now what we have, and my problem with the media, I think we talked in the last video about this, politicians being like pandering actors. And I think a lot of our mass media is exactly that now. These people aren't actual journalists. No. They're just there to look good and read off some news and maybe give you some viral clips. That's about it.
So, I mean, I could picture it right now. I could close my eyes. The film of Cronkite taking off his glasses.
Yeah.
Looking at the clock. I don't remember exactly what time it was. He says at 6:45 p.m. President Kennedy is dead.
Yeah.
And he took his glasses off and was almost crying. And just contrast that to the coverage that we got with the Trump. Is this guy a registered Republican? Did he donate to Democrats?
You had worse than that. We had all these people in so-called mainstream channels, MSNBC, whatever, lamenting the fact the guy missed. Like on TV, within a 24-hour period of this, they're lamenting the fact the guy missed. Like that is sick.
That is true, but that's not mainstream. MSNBC and Joy Reid, that's not mainstream.
Well, you know what
mainstream
I mean.
is those are the.
I know what you mean. But it's still, even so, it shouldn't be happening.
No, of course not.
We should have answers. We should have honest journalism. Like, I don't care about right, RD, left, right, whatever. Just give me the honest facts, answers. If you're a journalist, your job is to provide facts and answers. That's it.
But
ask those tough questions.
But my point is look at the facts that they do report on. The political party.
That's the misdirection.
Right, exactly.
Look over here, but not over here. It's a magician's trick, right?
Right.
And they do this with everything, right? Look at the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq for the Iraq War under Bush, right? Mm-hmm. It was misdirection. Look over here and not over here,
right?
And that's
what they're trying to do by.
But I would argue
blaming Iran, right?
I would argue that since Kennedy's assassination, that's what we've been given.
What?
Since Kennedy's assassination, I think Kennedy's assassination is a turning point in our country. So when the Kennedy assassination happened, it kind of proved the establishment could take out a president or do what they want to do, and I think that's where we really kind of lost control of this thing, and the bureaucrat state became more a thing. And I think they're the ones who actually, I think at this point, honestly, I'm going to say. You have very few individuals controlling all of the media, most of the media, right? It's like 6 or 7 corporations that own like the vast majority of media in this country or in the world, even at this point. So those people are very closely aligned and tied to the people running the government, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I think you're getting the narrative and the media message that they want you to have.
Well, sure.
And that's the problem.
Even if there was, CIA involvement or any kind of government involvement in the attempt on Trump, even if there wasn't directly, indirectly, all of this stuff, he's a Nazi, he's a danger to society, he's a danger to democracy.
They set the stage for it to happen,
yes,
without a doubt.
They did set the
they're
stage.
Culpable. Absolutely,
yes,
they're culpable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because, if you're in Germany in 1927, and you have foreknowledge that this guy's going to kill 14 million people or whatever, World War II, whatever, and Hitler's in front of you, you're going to take a shot at the guy? Most men would say yes, because they understand the history of it, right?
Right. But the problem is that none of what we're saying, all of what we're saying right now, may not even be close to the truth.
No, it may not be.
Because we don't get the real information,
we have to go out and conjecture.
Our brains have to come to some sort of a conclusion, right? So, look, everybody's been talking about for a couple of years now that somebody's going to try to take out Trump.
So, I am a very seasoned detective, right? And I'll give you my no shit, honest detective perspective on this to take all the partisan crap out of it and everything else out of it, right? So some key points that I would be looking for, okay? Who's this guy talking to? Where did this guy get the equipment from? Where did this guy train? And who gave him the stuff, you know? Because you're not getting explosives like that just every day, you know? You're not going to make a device like that just on your own unless you've been trained. And this guy had no military training at all, so somebody taught him.
Right.
And you're not getting that in the anarchist cookbook. I'm sorry, those kinds of devices, you're not going to learn to build a device like that in the anarchist cookbook. You learn to build a pipe bomb, you know, or a tannerite or something like that.
Right, but the questions you're asking him, Mike, are the questions that the media should be asking.
And they're not.
Should be demanding that the FBI and the Secret Service answer.
And that's the whole point of this whole thing is, what the hell? You know, where is the media right now where they're supposed to be asking these questions? I feel like this information will come out probably sooner rather than later. I don't think we'll have a candidate that will wait 60 years.
I do.
I think it'll be probably sooner rather than later, but I think the world is changing.
Why would you have any faith in that?
It's not faith in the government giving it. I think it's faith in those people who are willing to go out and dig it up. And there's a lot of citizen journalists now, which is... So when the media became corporatized and became this kind of like other bureaucratic arm of the government almost, you know? You saw the kind of rise of like these citizen journalists, right? So during the COVID crisis, what happened? Citizen journalism became like a big thing. And it's taken on a life of its own now, and you have tremendous amounts of them out there, and they are asking these questions that we're talking about.
I know
right
that,
now.
Mike, but like I said in another video, they don't have the budget, they don't have the staff, they don't have the sources, the connections that the New York Times does, that ABC. You do need that, Mike, especially if you're digging
necessarily.
deep.
If you get that right, you get that one person who hits that right note with that other one person.
I mean, they may come up with a theory and have somebody that could validate something, but I think. You know, you need the New York Times, you need ABC News, you need these organizations to be the ones to do this, but they won't. But they're the ones that have the budget, they're the ones that have the staff. You know, Woodward and Bernstein didn't do this out of their own pocket, right, when they were covering Watergate.
Well, of course
not.
They
had the Washington Post behind them. They had a lot of money, a big staff. That's what you need, but they're not doing it, and that puts it to the what you call citizen journalists. Yep. I don't particularly like that. But it is what it is, and you're right. Those are the only people that are going to ask questions. But again, I go back to what I was saying. I'm a believer in capitalism, and if enough people in America demand a product, they're going to get that product. And if the product we demand is a curious and adamant and very, very motivated mass media, we'll get it. But I don't think enough Americans demand that anymore. You know, they just don't want it.
They've gotten so used to like the soundbite TV, right. The 30-second clip, and like they get their media. Like a lot of people, we talked about this in a previous video. I forget which one.
No, what I'm saying, maybe I didn't phrase it right. What I'm saying is if you know enough New York Times subscribers cancel their subscriptions, right? If enough viewers of World News Tonight
they put pressure on them to actually do it.
And the people in charge of those corporations understood that the product that they're putting out is not what the people want, they'd have to change. And that's what makes me sad, because obviously they're not getting that message, and maybe Americans aren't sending that message, because you know what? World News Tonight still gets 7-8 million viewers a night. ABC News. They get 7-8 million people watching World News Tonight. The New York Times still, they don't make as much in print anymore, but online, they get it. So there's not the demand for it. And if there was, I truly believe capitalism works. If there was enough demand for a media that was going to demand answers from our government, like they used to,
I think there's still
we'd get it.
And then you have like people like Julie Kelly, you know, who is true journalism. She's covering all the Trump trials, especially with Chuck Pan and all that stuff.
No, I know, but I understand. But
so
you're
you have
talking
some
about
people out there that are
individual.
kind of doing.
Yes.
But I mean, look at James O'Keefe. He's an individual. Look at the impact he made in O'Keefe Media. They made a tremendous impact.
Yeah, he does.
So I think that there is I think there's a growing army.
But James
of
O'Keefe
people.
is not going to uncover what happened with the Trump assassination.
I don't know. The guy uncovered some pretty amazing shit.
And
he's doing some crazy stuff.
Even people like Matt Taibbi and Cy Hirsch and people that do have real connections in government that might be able to.
Another great example.
You know, maybe they can get something, but I'm talking about full stories that could take months. I do think somebody like Cy Hirsch or Matt Taibbi, because they do still have those connections. I could definitely
see Matt Taibbi doing it. Sure, absolutely.
They might get some information, but Mike, I just don't see a lot of demand right now for this story. That's what really troubles me. It's like America's just moved on.
Well, they have.
You know?
They have. And that comes back to
Americans.
Americans.
That doesn't trouble you?
It drives me insane.
Oh.
It drives me insane. But the attention span of the average American is ridiculously low at this point.
Yeah, well, because we have so much stuff, right? I mean, you could, if you
It's
spend
this
all day
tidal wave of information every day.
You can't. I mean, again, I've never been on, but I would assume you could spend all day on your Twitter feed, right?
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
So there's just so much out there.
Any social media feed, yeah.
It goes back to supply and demand, right? The more there is of something, the less it's worth. So
there's actually a term for that, where people spend their time just doing it called doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling?
Yeah, we just sit there and just click through and just keep reading or keep watching TikTok or Facebook or whatever.
Why
it is.
doom?
I guess because you're just basically dooming yourself to doing nothing.
I thought you meant maybe they're looking for something really bad.
The other term was bed rotting. They just lay in bed all day and play on their phone. Don't get out of bed.
So, we go back to a time when Kennedy got assassinated, and again, they obviously didn't come up with the answers, but at least the media tried. You had 22 minutes of news a night and newspapers. That was it.
Yeah.
But Americans were much more informed, and the media was much more demanding of answers, and just times have changed, I guess. But I know you put a lot of faith in, and I hope you're right. That this whole citizens journalism thing works. But
I'm seeing a movement of people, and I watch it closely, right? I watch people. That's kind of what I always did. But I'm seeing a movement of people doing this stuff, about people kind of, banding together. So you'll see, in a number of realms, right? I'm not a big true crime guy. I don't get into those spaces a lot because I feel like the people in those spaces register too much.
You mean the TV shows? True crime TV shows?
Yeah, I mean, these citizen groups, on, say, Reddit or something like that, forum or on social media forums. Because I'm an actual investigator, right? I'm an experienced investigator. I've actually worked these cases. I know what it looks like. And when you get in those spaces, having that kind of knowledge, it's not appreciated. It's not even because people don't want their myths dispelled. They don't want their theories trashed. They don't want to find out that what they think isn't reality and it doesn't work that way.
Sure.
They don't like that, so they tend to react negatively to you when you get in those kinds of spaces. And I feel like the mass media has almost become that same kind of realm, where you have broadcast journalism, right? These people who get on TV, they look good and they read off their lines, and that's all they basically do. They're actors. When you get a real journalist, it's almost a negative reaction to them, right?
Well, yeah, sure.
So
especially
that's
by
what
the
I think
people
goes back
who
to
they're uncovering.
Right. Well, and that's what I think comes back to what you were saying. But now what I'm seeing is on social media, different social media platforms, is a thirst for that kind of citizen journalism. So when Matt Taibbi did his Twitter files, that went viral so quick. I mean,
it
went
let me ask you
across the
something.
entire sphere, the political sphere.
Let me ask you your honest opinion here. If you went up and just randomly asked 10 people in the street, just random 10 people in the street,
right?
Hey, tell me what you know about the Twitter files.
Very little.
Nothing.
Very little.
That's my point.
I remember that happened last year or something like that. Yeah.
I would venture to say 8 out of 10 of them would say, "What are you talking about?"
Possibly, yeah.
But Mike, that's my point. When something was on the news when we were kids, everybody knew about it. Yeah. Because literally a third, 35%, maybe even close to 40%. You know what? Hold on a second. I'm sorry. I wrote this down for a different podcast, different episode we were doing here. Okay. So back when Cronkite got 25 to 30 million viewers a night when we had a 200 million population.
Right.
That means he got about 15% of Americans.
Yeah.
And that was just him.
Just
right?
him.
Now you add the other ones who had less of a viewing audience than him, but you add NBC and ABC to it.
You get over half the country.
Americans were informed, right? So now the Twitter files. If the Twitter file, and Matt Taibbi did an awesome job, so did Barry Weiss.
Yeah, they all did. They did a great job.
I know about it.
True
a
journalism.
lot of our viewers probably know about it.
Yeah, it was true journalism.
Right? But here's the problem. That's not the problem. The problem is that if the New York Times had released the Twitter, if they had done the investigation, right? Or if ABC News or even CNN had done that and released all that information, I would venture to say most Americans would know about it because they have a wider reach.
Sure, they got a bigger platform to spread it out on.
That's my point. So yes, some of these citizen journalists are great, and I wouldn't call Taibbi or Barry White citizen journalists. They've been journalists their whole lives. But I see your point. But again, if it was done by the legacy media, if they uncovered the Twitter files, which of course they wouldn't, right? Because they're in the pockets.
Complicit.
Of course, they're complicit in all of that stuff.
They came out the bad guys on that one.
But had they covered it, Then if you went and asked the average person out on the street, they may not be able to tell you what it was, but they say, "Oh, sure, the Twitter files."
Yeah, they would know of it. Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's my point, Mike. That's what that's the difference
and I don't
between
disagree.
the citizen journalism.
I don't disagree, but I think that what you're seeing is a genesis point of the citizen journalism. I think you're seeing a genesis point where like the legacy media is becoming less and less relevant, and these citizen journalists are becoming more and more relevant. So what I think is happening is I think social media is kind of, to some degree, social media is becoming, is maturing in some way that maybe the people didn't expect it to.
All right, Mike, hold on now. These are not Cronkite numbers, not even close, but this is 2023 Nielsen. ABC World News Tonight averaged 7.5 million viewers.
Okay.
CBS Evening News 4.5, NBC Nightly News 6.7 million viewers. That's about 20 million viewers a night just watching network news. That's a lot of people. It's not the same percentage because remember we had much less of a population, but that's still a lot of people.
Sure.
So if those networks cover something, people will know. You know, people will know. Unfortunately, if Matt Taibbi puts something on Substack or on X, you'll know because you're searching for it. I'll know because I'm searching for it. I don't think the average person would know. That's what I think is happening with the Trump assassination now. Is that, yes, you are right. There are people asking questions, and they should, because just like you and I, there's a lot of curious people out there. And some of them have sources, and some of them have ways of finding things out.
Sure.
The thing that bothers me is they just don't have the reach.
Right, they don't. But I think what's happening is that reach is kind of, it's not quite there, and I don't think it's anywhere near what legacy media has right now. But I think it's growing, and I think it's getting stronger, and I think
I agree
in
with you,
a
it's
very
the direction.
reasonable period of time, that reach is going to eclipse, nightly news. It's going to eclipse this legacy media, and we're going to see this like evolution where things kind of come.
Yes.
And exactly to your point, like where capitalism demands it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that needs to be met from outside that sphere because that sphere has become so insulated now with their own nonsense.
I agree with you. That's the direction we're going. I don't even think that's.
I don't think we're there yet.
I don't even think that's an argument.
I don't think we're there yet, but I do definitely see the genesis point of it.
No, but I agree with you. I mean, that's obvious. I don't think a normal person could argue with you on that. That's the direction we're going. And again, I'm not very knowledgeable about social media, but what I do know, and tell me if I'm wrong, the news you get on social media comes one of two ways, right? It either comes in your feed because the algorithm knows you're interested in something like that, so you get it, or you have to search for it, right?
Yep.
Okay. That's, to me, a problem. Because if all you're getting automatically is stuff that the algorithm knows you're interested in, then that's what you're going to get. Right, so it is. Yes, you're right. The demand is going to be met because that's what you're demanding. But it's still always going to be niche. It's always going to be niche because this is what you, Mike, want. Right, this is what you, Mike, and your group of people want.
The AI is going to look at what you're usually searching
exactly,
for, or
you're going to search it out yourself because you want to see it. Whereas, the broadcast journalists or the old newspapers or whatever, again, you bought a newspaper in the morning on your way to work to read on the subway. Not because you wanted, a certain article. You bought the newspaper because you wanted to know what the news was that day. And everybody found out kind of the same things.
I think that the newspaper of our day is Substack today for this new generation. Because they'll go to like Substack and they'll subscribe to these certain people on Substack, and they'll get their information from those people. But a lot of times what you see is like a carryover on Substack or even other platforms like social media platforms. You'll see like, Dan Bongino or Tucker Carlson or whatever is sharing out this person's stuff or that person's stuff or that person. So like there's these like disparate connections that start to get made. And that's where you get like this kind of ecosystem.
That's where the spreading of it will happen.
Yeah, like the ecosystem kind of grows from there. So you kind of like 1 point leads to 5 more points, leads to 20 more points, and that's where it kind of spreads out.
But I think
that's what's developing now. I don't think it's quite there yet, but I think it's starting to develop now, and I think that's what's.
But I think you would agree with me. One of the bigger problems is that back in the day, if the government tried to pressure the New York Times not to print something, the New York Times would sue their ass.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas now, if the government pressures Twitter or Facebook or somebody, and we've seen this. Right,
misinformation and all that bullshit.
Of course, or the suppressing of the Hunter Biden laptop story
right before the election. Yeah.
They'll listen. They're scared of the government. I think it used to be the government was scared of the press.
Yeah, it used to be.
You know, I think that's changed now.
And then the government killed Kennedy, and we got this mess that we're in now, 60 years later.
Yeah, and we're not allowed to know even what happened to Trump.
Exactly, and that's what needs to change.
Mike, you have a radio show to do tonight. You want to tell them about it so they can maybe listen in?
Yep, 7.5 Radio on the Liberty News Network. Excuse me. You can tune in 10 p.m. Saturday nights live. You can also check us out on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast. We rebroadcast it all there. But it's a great show. Pete and Walter, amazing guests. Amazing hosts. I'm a reoccurring guest now. I call myself.
I was a guest last week and had a lot of fun.
And Rick will be on again, and we have other interesting people coming on all the time. Definitely tune in, check it out. It's a great show. It's current events, politics, everything and anything you can think of under the sun.
And I think if you're a conservative or a MAGA type person, I think
you'll definitely like it. You'll definitely enjoy the show.
It's definitely part of that.
We talk about everything. I mean, just about everything. So definitely tune in, check it out, let us know. Also, like, subscribe, share this video out. Help us start the conversation with everybody. We want to hear what you have to think. Get down in that comment section. Let us know what your thoughts are on this whole Trump assassination thing.
Yeah,
should be asked.
Are you satisfied with the information that you've gotten on the Trump assassination, or are you somebody that would demand more? Are you happy with the state of these things?
We're gonna do some work this week on it and try and dig up a little more information on it, and we'll see what we can get. And we're gonna come back to this though and have some more.
Well, hopefully the media goes back to the days when they used to be the ones demanding answers on these things, but
instead of us having to dig through fucking.
But I don't see those days coming back, my friend.
I think they will eventually.
Mike, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Mr.
Everybody have a good night. Tune in next time.
Guys, remember, like, share, subscribe, share with your friends, comment down below, let us know what your thoughts are. We want to have that conversation.
We got to go milk those cows.
Time to milk.
Good night,
guys. Thank you.